Hey, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Coffee Shop Chatter. I'm Mr. Controversy. So we got some more controversial news on VP nominee Tim Walz for stolen valor. So for those of you who don't know whether people who served or people that have retired, veterans in general, what we consider stolen valor is you saying you did something that you didn't do, you saying you obtained a rank that you never obtained, you wearing things on your uniform like airborne wings, air assault wings, jump master wings, but you never did any of it. So Mr. Tim Walz said he went to war, never did, was called himself retired Command Sergeant Major Waltz, was accepting people calling him Command Sergeant Major, when in fact, I don't think he even was a sergeant major. So we have this thing in the military that we call frocking. And you're like, what the hell is frocking? Frocking is if there's a position open, give you an example. They need a first sergeant, which is a master sergeant, but they wear a diamond. You're a sergeant first class, not even promotable. But you're the only one that's available currently that they can put in there because they don't have a master sergeant to put in that slot to actually wear the hard diamond. They will frock you by putting that rank on you with the diamond, but you are actually still a sergeant first class. You still get the pay of a sergeant first class. You do not get the pay of a master sergeant. They now have changed it. I know for us, I was both enlisted and I was an officer. So they opened up positions for me. So I was a major. We had slots within my branch, within our division for electronic warfare and cyber, for a lieutenant colonel. So I could have been frocked if I didn't have a lieutenant colonel. They could have frocked me to that position. I will wear the rank of a lieutenant colonel, but I will also get paid. Once I left that unit and go somewhere else, I lose the rank, I lose the pay, and I go back to my previous pay grade, which would have been 04. He was in the Sergeant Major Academy at the time that he was a battalion command Sergeant Major. So once you drop out of the academy, because you go to the academy as a master sergeant, you graduate as a sergeant major, which is a SGM. Once you get put in a command slot, which you have to wait for your number to come around and everything. Then you become a CSM, which is a command sergeant major. But I'm not going to explain this anymore. I'm going to let somebody who knows him personally explain it to you for me.
I do want to point out just yesterday, the Harris campaign tweeted out a soundbite from him from 2018 where he seems to be suggesting he was, quote, in war. In war. Take a listen to this.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Now, Tom, he did go to Italy in 2003. Afghanistan was underway at that time, not yet Iraq. Memory serves. I'm trying to remember the exact date, but he was in Italy. So could that arguably be, quote, in war?
Well, maybe it felt like war to him. I guess it's not technically war. That's not a combat zone. You're not getting combat pay in there, and you are not in war. That is just absolutely just another Tim Walz lie out there, and the people listening to it probably believe it because they don't know any better. I mean, he had it out there that he was in Italy and supporting troops that went to Afghanistan or some BS story, and yeah, that's. I think I guess I'm pretty sure Iraq was starting and going on at that time to a certain
It
point.
started in 03. I just don't know when,
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
03
And,
this
and we
happened.
were there because I'm pretty sure when we were there, we got the notification that Saddam had been captured. Because he was on. They were hunting him basically from whatever time, and I'm pretty confident it was like December of '03 when they caught him. And I know everybody was elated, that we finally caught that dirty dictator that had done horrible things to his people and his country for years and years, and maybe things would finally change. That was yeah, that is just amazing. I can't believe you'd think a
I
lightning
mean,
bolt would have struck him right there.
well, can you help us understand why that's such a big deal, right? Because I think there might be some people at home saying like, in war, he was kind of war adjacent. He was in Italy helping support the guys who were, quote, in war. Is it a big deal to say you were in war when you weren't actually in combat?
It's a huge deal for veterans, and it should be a huge deal for the general public out there because basically it's proof that you're a liar. And if you're just lying for political gain or you're lying just because you think that's what the people you're talking to want to hear, that's not good as a leader of a country. I mean, to me, that's just it's undescribable how somebody can do that. As far as the you know soldiers out there, there's an awful lot of them that I mean before 2000, I had never been to war. I've been overseas training here and there. We were in the Cold War, which technically was a war. We didn't fire a shot, but we built things up to the point where we broke the Soviet Union without having to be in a hot war with them, which was good. But for somebody to say they've been in war and they're not, that is, like the saying has been, stolen valor. You're basically out there acting like you're something that you're not, and that's not a good thing. That's bold-faced lying.
I think every soldier knows that. I mean, I just think every soldier knows there's a distinction between being in war and being in a position to support the guys who are actually in the war. And most soldiers would never dream of saying they'd fought in it when they hadn't, though Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut certainly did and was nonetheless elected to senator as a Democrat, notwithstanding. There's another question of stolen valor, which I teased before the break, and that is this position of command sergeant major, which he held for a short time conditionally, as you outlined before. He needed to complete some other things in order to actually have the title, which he didn't. But now, repeatedly since he left, he's referred to himself as a retired command sergeant major, and he's allowed others to introduce him and call him that. Here's just an example.
I'm a retired command sergeant major. I spent 24 years in the Army National Guard.
So when you first came to Washington, you were a retired command sergeant major in the Army National Guard, so you were drawn immediately to...
As a 24-year veteran of the
Shaking his head
National
yes.
Guard and the Red Bull Division and a retired command sergeant major.
So why do you think that's not true? Why do you have an issue with him doing that?
Because it is not true. He is not a retired command sergeant major. He's a retired master sergeant. When he failed, when he dropped out of the sergeant major's academy, and when he quit, the obligations were not fulfilled for his conditional promotion. So he ended up being reduced to master sergeant. So his retirement, which he's 60 now, which is probably drawing, is E8 master sergeant. He is not a retired command sergeant major. The state of Minnesota even brought it out there. Well, he can't call himself a retired command sergeant major, but he can say he served as, which, technically he was an acting command sergeant major for a few months, and then he didn't fulfill responsibilities and the conditions, and he was reduced. So they kind of came around and he hawed that. Well, yeah, he can say he served as one, but he's right there on video and audio that he says he is a retired command sergeant major, and he's not. That's part of the reason that I brought this whole thing out in 2016, I believe, was when he came down to a memorial here and in Heron Lake, Minnesota, and he spoke, and he did the same thing to them. The public. He was in the first district of Congress, the United House of Representatives, and he basically said that he was a retired command sergeant major. There was a write up in the paper, and it was in there 6-7 times. And he tooted his horn how he was the highest ranking, whatever. And one of my neighbors said, well, he knew I had went to Iraq, and he was like, I got to meet a fellow command sergeant major of yours. And I said, he is not one. I said, he didn't fulfill the obligations. And his son-in-law is in the military in South Dakota. And he was like, we don't know that. You need to get this out there. And I'm like, why do I got to do this? I just want to be back here in Southwest Minnesota and live my life, and he's like, well, somebody's got to bring it out there. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm the one chosen then. So I wrote a letter to Mr. Walz, and I basically said, this is a lie. Can you just please correct the record? If somebody calls you a retired command sergeant major, can you please just tell them that is not true and just come clean? I gave him the opportunity. He didn't say a damn word to me. And so I sent it to the other departments in Washington that he was on the committees with. And I told them all, I said, he's not a retired command sergeant major. I'd appreciate it. And everybody else out there that is a actual command sergeant major would appreciate it if he would cease and desist lying to everybody. And then he started losing in the first district, and he ran for governor. And then our state, they had the Great Minnesota cover up with him, basically, where they didn't want this to get out too much, so they kind of hid it. But now that he's on the national stage, I think people they absolutely need to know the truth before he gets in any more powerful position.
How about all those actual command sergeant majors who went through the 2-year training, did their duty, served the country for that additional time, earned the title? Why should he be running around saying he's retired with that rank when he didn't actually earn it? It was a conditional title that he didn't actually earn it out. And now it is stolen valor. I agree with you. You've convinced me. I didn't totally understand it, I confess, before we chatted, Tom, but that's just wrong. I mean, the titles in military service matter. They show that you've been elevated for a reason. You've done some extra work. You've done some extra, things of honor in some cases, but the medals, the titles, they're there for a reason.
They are, and that's part of the reason the stolen valor stuff came out when it did, because you had people out there that were wearing a combat infantry badge or a silver star or a bronze star or a combat action badge, or they had service stripes that showed they were overseas for 2 years. And and then they came out with it, and I think they actually said that, well, yeah, that's kind of a weird way to have a freedom of speech thing. But this whole command sergeant major thing is, there's thousands of people that have went through the academy and have served honorably all the way up to the United States Army command sergeant major, the top dog of all of them. And everybody put in their time and their devotion to duty and their loyalty and their integrity and respect for others and their selfless service. And you got this guy out. I mean, I met a couple E9s and a couple colonels air base one time when we were just waiting for flight. And then I found out later that their helicopter got shot down, and there were 7 of them on there, and there was a female CSM from Iowa, and they all got killed, and they're buried in Arlington. And it's like, somebody needs to speak for them to keep somebody like this from being able to hang on their coattails and say, yeah, I was a CSM, I was a command sergeant major, we got to stop these weapons of war, I was in war. I mean, what is going on with this guy? I mean, I think he's lived the lie so long he believes it himself.
Tom, we reached out to him to get a reaction to what we anticipated you would be saying. No response. He did give a response back in October 2022 to the Star Tribune, and said, quote, "I don't know if Tom just disagrees with my politics or whatever, but my record speaks for itself and my accomplishments in uniform speak for itself."
So you heard that. Now this is from a retired colonel, Fulberg colonel. He said, "My final combat deployment as a squadron commander ended a month after Walz retired suddenly to let his unit go into combat without him. We entered the service within a few years of each other, so are close to the same age. He was the battalion command sergeant major, the man they would follow into combat. His cowardice is intolerable to those of us who've done our duty, especially as commanders and senior non-commissioned officers." The dude, like he said, I mean, I said it, and I'm gonna say it again. The man's a fucking coward. He's a coward. He did 24 years, and for y'all, some of y'all was like, "Oh, well, he did 24 years. He was in the National Guard." So let me tell you what the work schedule is for a National Guard, and I have it pulled up. The typical work schedule for Army National Guard members is 1 paid drill weekend per month and 2 weeks of paid annual training each summer. We work, when I say mandatory, 5 days a week. We deploy 7 days a week. So that's the difference between us and them. And when he had to go to Iraq to put in that time that he would have to put in that we put in as active duty soldiers, he didn't want none of that. He wanted the cush life. So he dropped out of the academy. Because like he said, they was once they got the notification that they was deploying to go to Iraq. I've never dodged a deployment. Hell, I tried to stay longer. I went to Bosnia 1996 for an entire year. I went to Kosovo 1999 when it first started. I went to Bosnia also when it first started. I went to Iraq in 2003, March 2003, when the war was going on. I was over there then. Came back, went back in 2005 to 2006. I stayed over a year. Came back, went to Afghanistan in 2007. And then I was pretty much good for a while. I was supposed to go I went to OCS, got commissioned. I was a sergeant first class. I was supposed to go to Afghanistan to be an advisor. Canceled our mission, and it was due to some things that was going on. Pretty much they was taking out advisors, and they canceled our entire mission. Then I went back to Afghanistan in 2019 into 2020, and I was there for a year. And I just retired in 2023. So I've never ran from a deployment. When they ask for volunteers, people who want because most times units that deploy, usually they're over 100%. They use like 110% because they look at, you're going to have not loss of personnel, but because of injuries and stuff like that, they always want to go plussed up. So they always will say, "Hey, such is going to deploy. If you want to go, come in the orderly room, put your name down." I always wrote my name. I never got selected. I don't know if it's luck. I can't even say it's luck. To me, I would say it's bad luck because I always wanted to go. But I just never got picked up on those additional missions. But I always volunteered to go. So like I always tell soldiers, don't be surprised when you have to go somewhere to fight a war. That's what's called the Army. If you look at the history of any military, I don't care what branch you look at, you deploy. You go. There's a possibility you're gonna go to war, and that's why I always tell my guys, hey, you may be here for 3 years, but you may be lucky and escape through. You may not. I joined Army in 1994. 95, I was in Germany. The end of 95, I was riding in the train going to Bosnia before the new year. And I was in Bosnia for over a year. So he's a coward. Yes, he definitely did stolen valor because he's never been to combat, which he was saying he was in war. He's stolen valor, saying he's a retired command sergeant major when he's actually a retired master sergeant. And if he wants to debunk people, show your DD 214. Everybody who's retired, who's gotten out the Army, or even ETS out the Army, you got a DD 214. And on that DD 214, it's going to tell you what rank you was and what military schools you went to. So if you actually graduated from the Sergeant Major Academy, it's going to be on there. It's also going to tell you whether you have an honorable or dishonorable or general type of discharge. But it definitely has your rank on there. Master Sergeant. So for all you people out there that's talking about people don't know what they're talking about, you got people that knows him that's coming out. And once he get in front of some actual people that's going to ask him this, what was his actual pay grade? I want to see if he's going to come clean or he's going to keep trying to ride that damn storm and somebody's going to get a hold of that damn DD-214. And somehow it's going to get out there because the only thing they got to do is redact his social security number and a couple of other things. But they can show everything else. I'm just saying. But that's all I got. Other than that, hey, like, comment, and hit the subscribe button. Tell me what you think about this whole mess about, especially the veterans that's out there, those of us who actually did serve, those of us who actually did earn our ranks, and people who may say, yo, you don't know what you're talking about. I'll tell you what, I'll put your career up against mine any fucking day. Let's see what your accomplishments were. See what you did. Because if you know what a stallion is in active duty, that's what the fuck I was. That's the side I fall on. I'm not one of the few. There ain't a lot of us they call stallions. And if you know what it is, then you know what it is. But like I say, I just want to hear what other people got to say about it. Hey, that's all I got. This is Mr. Controversy, and I'm out of here.